So in this set of videos we're going to take a look at FM8. Now on the face of it, FM8 can seem quite daunting to those who are not familiar with FM synthesis, but actually when you break it down it's really not as bad as some people would have you believe. So we're actually going straight into the expert mode in these videos, but obviously you can browse for certain types of sound using the browser, and you know, FM8 is capable of everything from actually fairly analog sounding sounds to sort of cold digital timbres, evolving textures, angry bass sounds. Yeah, a huge palette of sounds is available from FM8. Now actually when you first load the instrument, and we've just got a new sound up here, you can go File, New Sound. It's actually a very simplistic texture that we're given. It's just a pure sine wave. So obviously, you know, we're going to look to see how we can make it sound a little bit more interesting in a moment. In some respects, you could think of FM8 as an analog synthesizer that's got 6 oscillators. So, you know, potentially you could get a huge analog type sound from the device by activating all 6 oscillators. Unlike, say, the father of all FM synths, the DX7, where all of its oscillators were based around sine waves, in FM8 we can choose lots of different waveforms. So classically, like I say, FM synthesis would be done by combining sine waves together. But in this case, yeah, we've got a huge number of different waveforms and textures and timbres to pick from. So before we go any further, what is FM synthesis? Well, in a analog subtractive synthesizer, you start with a raw waveform, like for argument's sake, let's say a square wave. And then we start to chop away at that with things like an amplitude envelope, maybe a filter envelope, a filter. And so, yeah, we start with, if you think like a full block of clay, and then we start to chop it out to carve the sound out that we want. FM synthesis, or additive synthesis, which FM8 is also capable of, is the opposite. We are sort of adding oscillators, textures together to build up a sound from the ground up. So like I say, FM8 has got 6 oscillators, or operators as they're called in FM synthesis. We can choose the waveform of each of those here. We can then add some noise to that, and then we've got a filter operator as well. Okay, so let's get started. So by default, you can see here's the FM matrix. By default, operator F is active. So you can see we can change the waveform here like I just did. Get different textures and timbres. Just go back to the sine wave for the time being. And you can see there's this line down to this line at the bottom here, and it says 80. So this is basically the mixer section. So if I click and drag this number 80, you can see I'm just turning the level of that operator down and up. So the maximum value is 100. Okay, so if we just, I'm just going to drop a tuner device just downstream. I'm just going to hold a C, and you can see it's giving me a C. Okay, so at the moment none of these other operators are active. If I wanted to activate an operator, I'll just right click on it, and if I want to start sending that to the main output, I can just click and drag here. Just drag vertically. There we go. So if I combine E and F together, you can see we're just going to get the exact same sine wave sound. It's just going to be a little bit louder. So how do we get a slightly more interesting texture from that? Well, fairly simply I could change the waveform. This is pretty cool. If you want to see a spectrum of your sound and also a picture of what it looks like, if you just go to this spect here, so if I just remove the E, you can see we go back to a pure sine wave. And it shows you the harmonics that are in the sound. So you see we've got the fundamental peak here, and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So you can see a square wave consists of just odd numbered harmonics. FYI. Let's just go back to our operators. Let's put that back to a sine wave for the time being. Now, rather than pitching the operators away from one another, or the oscillators away from one another, using a tuning knob, and perhaps a coarse tune in semitones and a fine tune in cents like you would do on an analog subtractive synthesizer, we tend to work in ratios. You see right now the ratio is 1. If I click and drag E up to, or I can just double click in fact, let's just type in 2 there. So I'm playing the exact same note, and what I'm actually getting now is an octave up from that. So if I double click and I go 3, that's not the next octave. I would need to go up to 4. So you need to sort of just remember a little bit of sound theory. So when you double the frequency, you go up an octave, and when you halve the frequency, you go down an octave. So the first octave would be 1, second octave would be 2, third octave would be 4 rather. We'll just hold that same note down. There we go. We're getting an octave up from that. So that's first octave up to 2 would be the next octave, up to 4 would be the next octave. If I wanted to go to the next octave, it would be plus 8. If I wanted to go down an octave from the original pitch, this needs to be 0.5. Like that. And there we go. So if you now combine E and F together, you see there's my original pitch, and then if I add the second sine wave to that, there we go. Okay, so let's just activate some more operators, and let's see if we can add some sine waves together to give us the feel of a square wave. So, as we've already said, a square wave just contains odd numbered harmonics. So I'm going to leave F as 1. I'm going to set E. Let's just delete that. Let's go here and let's set that to 3. Let's go back to the spectrum. Okay, let's dial this in. Let's see what happens. Right, can you see now, as we add in that odd numbered harmonic, we're starting to make something that looks a little bit more like a square wave. If we go too far, we go past the square wave and we get these extra little sort of siny peaks added at 3 times the rate of vibration of the first fundamental peak here. Okay, so we just activated D, so let's now go here and let's type in 5, because that's the next odd numbered harmonic. Let's go back to the spectrum. you see now by carefully balancing these, I'm slowly but surely adding those odd numbered harmonics, beginning to make it look like a square wave. So we go to C, let's type in 7. Let's go back to spect. Should dial in some of that. In fact, let's just change that to 9 first. And we could keep going indefinitely, and eventually we would, get to something that looked a lot more like the square wave, which we know. So obviously, just labouring to make a point there, you wouldn't construct a square wave in this manner. You would just simply select square wave from here. But it's just a good example of showing that combining sine waves together. You can make any sound that you would care to, as long as the frequencies and the amounts are balanced appropriately. So that's the basis of additive synthesis, really, adding the sine waves together, or in FM8's case, you can add waveforms together of other timbres, adding them together to make new textures, timbres, and sounds.